All right, looking to do maybe a scenario series that's a little bit shorter than the VOD reviews and potentially help out, you know, newer comp players or, just comp player. There are comp players that I've worked with that are higher ranking, but they don't necessarily understand this way of thinking. So if this is something you like, I'll continue doing it. And if there are other scenarios that you see or have happened to you on other maps, feel free to let me know and I'll think about going through that as well. But this is just a common one that I see here on Oregon. Um, a lot of times, what I'll see is the player, like the defenders, in terms of this positioning, they're sitting here watching or holding these positions, or even if you're looking at like maybe like plat 3 and below, especially like gold and silver players. For some reason, they're sitting in this corner a lot. I'm not really sure why, but anyway. So what happens here is, attackers are looking to plant here most likely. Um, we're thinking about a scenario that's potentially 40 seconds or less at this point, 2v3, and most commonly you'll have like a smoke and whoever. It doesn't matter. I'm just using Jaeger in this scenario, but a lot of times players will play in these positions at this point, which is actually like not ideal because for one, the Jaeger is in a position where he can actively be taking fights, these types of fights and pre-fires, as well as, in this case, the Zof can swing the door and pre-fire, and I've seen a lot of people get picked over here on the bunks by that pre-fire because a lot of people are expecting someone to be sitting here in this L corner, whatever you want to call it. And so there's just a couple problems with that. And the first one is being that number one, like we just talked about, the Jaeger is in a position to be in active aggressive fights if he chooses to, and the smoke is not in a position to aid or support the Jaeger in any way. So in reality, something that could happen or does commonly happen is either the ace will just run straight across, get the plant. One way that they can help aid that in terms of the attacker is the Zof swings the door, pre-fires the Jaeger, he's shooting back, and that's when the ace runs across, and either he doesn't notice or he doesn't have a chance to react and kill the ace. Or B, they could throw smoke here so that the Jaeger can't see through the rotate or holes, whatever you make on the white wall here, and runs across, starts planting. And then again, we've got the smoke here who is really accomplishing nothing, and it's very common to see that players are positioned in these areas, and then, like we said, they're not in any position to effectively support the Jaeger in this. And I also see the smoke will sometimes swing out and pre-fire the door here. That's pretty dangerous. Obviously, you can win the gunfight. It is possible, but it's not the ideal way you would want to handle it. So the better way, I guess, before I move on, the other option that I see a lot of people playing is like Jaeger would be positioned here on white, which again is not a terrible position to be in. You can pre-fire this, you can swing, pre-fire that. The problem with this position is though is number one, just like the bunks here, it's a common spot and people pre-fire it, and two, once they realize that you're here, you're very boxed in. It's going to be hard to cross when they've got people watching this. Can swing out and kill you. You've got the Zof over here, and again, if the smoke is playing in this position, he's not in any position to help you get across or get out of white. So that's the one issue I see with white is you become very boxed in, especially when they realize that you're there. So the better option here is if possible, we would want the Jaeger to move up here to shelves, and we would want the smoke to be in here in attic. By playing these two positions, even though you're in a 2v3, if we're talking 40 seconds or less, we know at this point that they are going to either A, have to push for frags, or B, go for the plant. So by playing these positions, if the ace tries to run across and plant here, for one, you have the Jaeger who can pre-fire it, and by sitting in this position, you're not putting yourself in a position to be vulnerable to the Zof here. And it's the same thing with the smoke. Is the smoke can either Toxic Babe, the breach can Toxic Babe, the default spot. Can even Toxic Babe here, and a lot of this stuff that the smoke can do, as well as obviously pre-firing with the cross angle there, doesn't put them in a position to be vulnerable to the Zof. So at this point, if you think about the Zof's position, right, it's kind of useless unless they're pushing in or unless you swing out into them, right? Because she can't accomplish anything from this angle when you play like this. So, and it's same thing with the Nomad. The Nomad can get an angle on the door, but she's most likely going to have to either play a very tight angle to get the pre-fire here, or she's going to have to swing with the ace, right? So this puts them in a position where they have to be much more proactive and active against you, rather than if you were playing these positions. So that's one of the common issues that I see with T3 and below, especially when you're talking Plat 3 and below, is they don't understand, number one, how to reposition into these better positions for this fight, as well as playing off of each other. Because again, if the Jaeger is in Bunk's position or top white position, they can be taking active fights. But if the smoke is sitting in either of these positions, these three, they can't do anything active to support the Jaeger at all. So it's basically like a 1v3 at that point. But even when you look at these positions of attic and shelves here, even though it's a 2v3, especially if you have a smoke on the board, with 40 seconds or less, this is actually in your favor. So you just need to make sure that they're pushing into you. You need to understand that they're going to either come through this door, they're going to come through the breach. Like, this is a common situation that I see, and I've done so many VOD reviews for T3 and below, and they do this all the time. I'm not really sure. They don't. It seems like when you guys are actually in the moment, you don't understand like how to effectively play off of each other. So when you watch like pro players or CL players, they're constantly always positioning themselves to play off of each other, to support each other. You know, this is a team game, so you have to constantly be thinking, where is your teammate? What can I do to help them? What, utility do I have to help them? These are all questions that you have to constantly be asking yourself in the round as it's going, so that you can constantly be positioning yourself to effectively help that teammate. Because even like we're talking about here, 2v3 doesn't necessarily mean you're in a bad position. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose. It's all about how you play it and how you use your utility as opposed to them. Because again, if we're talking T3 and below, for the attackers, most likely this Zof is going to play pretty passive. If you get up into higher T3, then they're going to get obviously more aggressive. But a lot of times they'll stand in this door and they'll never push in, and they'll never do anything that's effectively going to help, or they do push in and they don't really know where to pre-fire or how to handle it, and they just get picked. So it works both ways, but obviously we're focusing on the defense in this position because a lot of the times, we're talking that there is a big problem with number one, repositioning, and number two, putting themselves in positions where they can help each other. So hopefully this helps some people understanding that way of thinking. If there are some scenarios that you would like me to go over that are common on other sites or other maps, feel free to let me know, and I'll go through those as well. Thank you for your time.